Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer video, but not like the normal deck text that we do. So today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 underrated cards in Pioneer. Before we hop into the list here, as always, let me know in the comment section below after the video, what is your top 10 look like? What does it look like compared to mine? Is there any cards that I definitely should have included? Just let me know below. But also, before we hop into here, this is my personal list. This is not necessarily by any ranking or anything like that, and a common theme that I'm going to be mentioning is all these cards are powerful in Pioneer. Like, you could play them in a deck and they would be very good. Unfortunately, a lot of these cards just either maybe don't line up in the format or in a deck the right way for them to be able to utilize them, because again, they're all very powerful cards. So they're a little bit awkward, but obviously we'll explain that once we hop into here. So number 10, our 10th card that I think is very underrated in Pioneer is Fiend Slayer Paladin. It's a 2/2 for 1 white human knight. Great creature typing. Has first strike and lifelink. Fiend Slayer Paladin can't be the target of black or red spells your opponents control. So I think this is a really underrated card for most white decks in general. So we don't have really a lot of protection from red and or black creatures. There are a couple in the format as a whole, but I really think that this is a very underutilized creature in especially the human decks. So obviously the black or red spells your opponents control, that means it's protected from cards like Play with Fire, Bone Crusher Giant, Fatal Push, Power Word Kill, Go for the Throat, to name a few at least of the main spells that are played in the format. Unfortunately, the abilities part's a little awkward, so that means like Blood Tithe Harvester can take it out. If it had black or red spells or abilities, I think that would be obviously a lot better. But I still feel as if Fiend Slayer Paladin is very, very underrated. You know, against like mono red, if you're playing humans, obviously, you know, they can't directly target it with any burn spells. And, you know, obviously you have First Strike and Lifelink, which is a very, very good effect overall. So I just think that Fiend Slayer Paladin is a very underrated card. And I definitely think some human decks should definitely consider playing this. Alright, so number 9 is Malevolent Hermit. It's a 2/1 for 1 and a blue, human wizard. We can tap a blue to sacrifice Malevolent Hermit, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. Then we can pay the disturb cost from the graveyard for 2 and a blue, which turns into Benevolent Geist. It's a 2/2 flyer. Non-creature spells you control can't be countered. And then if Benevolent Geist will be put into a grid from anywhere, exile it instead. So this kind of falls under the same line of there's not a lot of decks that could really play a card like this. See, you know, like Spirits, I don't think they really want it. You know, they don't really care. I mean, like, it's also weird because it's a human wizard, so it doesn't have like the spirit typing until it's the disturb. So like a spirit deck wouldn't really want this. I think personally the main deck that would want a card like this is, for instance, a Is It Wizard deck, maybe like a you know, blue-red Delver kind of list in Pioneer, which, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about a card that would definitely see play in a deck like that. But I think it's very interesting because the creature type isn't really there. I mean, it is a wizard, but, you know, and it's still a wizard when it transforms, so I think wizard, like a wizard mid-range deck would be the deck that would want this the most, but I just don't see this card seeing play anywhere. And I just think it's a very, very good card, and I just don't see it. So, I don't know. We need to start playing Malevolent Hermit a little bit more. So, that's why it's number 9 on the list. So, number 8 is Torrential Gearhulk. I know, crazy. The Gruul player put 2 blue cards on the list. It's a 5/6 for 4 blue artifact creature construct with Flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile it instead. It's a giant Snapcaster Mage. A lot of people have been talking about for a while, oh, you know, Snapcaster would be pretty broken if it was in Pioneer. We already kind of have a Snapcaster in a way. It's obviously different than Snapcaster and cheaper than Snapcaster Mage, but it has the same effect for the most part. Obviously, you can't hit sorceries, but there's still plenty of good instants in this format. I virtually see no decks play Torrential Gearhulk, and it is an extremely powerful card. I've seen a lot of people win games single-handedly with Torrential Gearhulk. A friend of mine said a couple months ago, this guy was playing the blue-white pre-constructed, or the blue-black pre-constructed deck that has the Gearhulks in there, and was just wrecking everybody that entire day with just the Torrential Gearhulks. So, it's an extremely underrated card. I know that there's a lot of graveyard hate in the format, which does not help Torrential Gearhulks, you know, doesn't really help motivate people want to play it, but It is very, very powerful. Yes, Beseiju can destroy it because it's an artifact. It doesn't matter. They only have a couple Beseijus. With the Torrential Gearhulk, it's a 5/6. It's just big, and it's a fantastic card, and that's why it's number 8 on the list. I did think about making it higher, but there's just a few cards. Obviously, there's 7 other ones that really needed to be higher on the list. So, number 7, we have Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Obviously, everybody saw the thumbnail. Everybody knew Chandra was going to be in the video. It's 4 loyalty, 2 red, Planeswalker Chandra. We can add a loyalty, exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card. If you don't, Chandra deals 2 damage to each opponent. Other loyalty, +1, add red to your mana pool. -3 deals 4 damage to a creature. And -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell. This emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player, which has been eroded to any target. So, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, a little bit of disclaimer. So far, at least on the list that we have so far, Chandra does see the most play out of all those decks. I still just think it's still underplayed. I know for a while there was like a big red deck going around and they loved playing Chandra, but you just don't see it very often. And even myself as I play Gruul in a lot of different decks, I have a hard time slotting Chandra into my deck because, if I'm playing 4 mana and I'm an aggro deck, obviously I'm not going to want a Chandra, which she would be very good in the sideboard. She's a very excellent sideboard card and mainboard card, but I have a hard time being able to slot it. The only deck that I've really found that I've built was my Manaform Hellkite deck, which Chandra is fantastic in that deck, which you should definitely check out that video, by the way. I'm plugging myself in there. But anyways, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, very, very powerful card. I just don't see it played a lot, and I think it's one of the cards that we need to start playing a little bit more, which is why it's number 7 on the list. All right. Number 6, we have Life Bane Zombie. A little bit of a throwback here. Since the format has started, I don't think I've seen a Life Bane Zombie cast. It's a 3/1 for 1 black zombie warrior with Intimidate. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a green or white creature card from it and exile that card. So, Life Bane Zombie, very, very good effect, especially against green or white creature decks specifically. And you want to know what couple of decks are very high in the metagame that play a lot of green and white creatures? Mono Green Devotion and Mono White Humans. Some of the best decks in the format. Life Bane Zombie is extremely good against. They can't block the Life Bane Zombie. It's a 3/1, so a lot of time they can trade with really anything. Life Bane Zombie is a fantastic card. Actually, my wife really likes to play zombies, and I'm definitely considering putting this in the sideboard just because against all those pesky human decks and the mono green decks, obviously want a little more oomph against them, and Life Bane Zombie is a very, very good card. So, Life Bane Zombie, number 6 on the list. Rakdos players, just start playing this card. Just do yourself a favor, just start playing it. So, number 5 on the list, we have Clothus, God of Destiny. It's a 4/5 for 1 red-green, legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Clothus isn't a creature. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a land card, you add red or green. Otherwise, you gain 2 life, and Clothus deals 2 damage to each opponent. So, the main thing is with Clothus is, I understand fetch lands are not in the format. So, it's not as easy to make the mana with Clothus' one ability with, exiling the card. But it doesn't matter. You don't even really play it in the format for that. It just grinds. You gain 2 and deal 2. I must say, when Clothus was first printed, I didn't think this card was very good. And then over time, started playing it in my sideboards, which then slowly made it into my main boards because it is amazing. Obviously, if you're playing against a hyper aggro deck, helps you gain some life, catch up a little bit. If you're playing against a mid-range deck, really helps you grind, puts them on a clock. Playing against control, puts them on a clock as well. It's just, Clothus does so much. Oh, and on top of that, if your opponent's playing graveyard shenanigans, you just eat all their stuff out of the graveyard. If you're playing a Gruul aggro deck and you play this on turn 2 after like a Llanowar or Elvish Mystic, it just puts in so much work. And then late game, as you're playing your Questing Beasts or your whatevers, then you just make it, then it's an actual creature and your opponent's caught off by it and you're attacking with it. So, Clothus, very, very underrated card in the format. I hardly see it featured in any sideboards, especially in Gruul boats, and I definitely think it has a place in the metagame. All right, so now we're hitting the top 4 territory. So now we've got some cards that I'm very passionate about, which number 4 is Wizard's Lightning. It's 2 and a red instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast. If you control a wizard, Wizard's Lightning deals 3 damage to any target. So, here's the thing. With Wizard's Lightning, it's not a card that I've cast a lot. Quite frankly, I've lost to Wizard's Lightning actually quite a bit. especially in Standard. But I think Wizard's Lightning is it's way too powerful of a card for it to not see more play in the metagame. Again, I've made a blue-red Wizards deck on the channel here. There's a lot of relevant creatures in Izzet that are wizards. It seems like most of them are wizards. It blows my mind how Lightning Bolt, essentially, is not seeing play more in the format. We need to see an Izzet Delver deck, especially with Malevolent Hermit, Wizards Lightning, Wizards or Torts, and you could go either way. You can go aggro with it. You can play Soulscar Mage and ball more and go aggro, or you can just go mid-range, play a Delver deck, play Delver and Wizards Lightning, Malevolent Hermit, Dreadhorde Arcanist, that kind of thing. This card is way too good to not see any play. So Lightning Bolt essentially needs to see more play in this format. Everybody's talking about, Lightning Bolt will be way too good for the format, which I'm one of those people. We already have Lightning Bolt in the format and no one plays it. So, all right, we're going to move on to number 3 before I get more frustrated. Number 3 is Glorybringer, one of my favorite cards in Magic, arguably my favorite card in the entire format. I can't even believe I'm going to tell you what it does because I've said this so many times on the channel. It's a 4/4 for 3 red dragon with flying and haste. You may exert Glorybringer as it attacks. When you do, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls. Simply put, you bash them for 4 and you kill one of their creatures most of the time. Puts your opponent on a clock. 4 damage, kills most relevant threats in the format other than Shieldred, but who cares? Whatever. It's Shieldred. It's not even that good anyways. Let's talk about it. But Glorybringer is a fantastic card, and I feel like Glorybringer is one of those cards where it's not in any high tier deck, but every time people play it, everybody's like, wow, Glorybringer's really, really good. Or you see it in a modern challenge or an RCQ top 8, and everybody's like, wow, this guy's playing Glorybringer and he's killing it with it. It's such a good card that no one plays. And again, it's kind of one of those scenarios where it's hard for it to fit into a deck because you can't hit it off of Collected Company. So, and then it's also a 5-drop. So, like, what deck wants a 5-drop? If you're ramping, there's kind of like Mono Green Devotion, obviously you're ramping into that. Its main home is there's 2 decks. There's like some like big red Obosh monsters or even just regular big red decks definitely want Glorybringer, and that's where it typically sees the most play. There is a Fringe Dragon deck that people also like to play in the format, which Glorybringer sees a lot of play there, which actually, speaking of that, I have a Gruul Dragons deck that I love to play in Pioneer, and I have 4 Glorybringers in the deck because it's the best 5-drop dragon in the format. But anyways, Glorybringer is a fantastic card in this format. I can't tell you how many times I've beat people with it, and they've been like, yeah, it's the best card in the deck, which that's what I tell people. Glorybringer, whenever I play my Gruul piles, it's always the best card in the deck. So Glorybringer is at number 3. All right, number 2, I definitely think it's a card that not a lot of people are expecting on this list. That's Mochas Command. It's a green and a white for an instant. Choose 2. Prevent all damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. Target player sacrifices an enchantment. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So, there's definitely a deck in the format which takes full advantage of a card like this. It is Scales. Scales loves playing Mochas Command. There's also a green-white vehicles list floating around the format that also plays a few Mochas Commands, but that's essentially it. I think if you're playing a green-white deck and it's creature-based, you should be playing Mochas Command. So, preventing all damage instant or sorcery would deal. Obviously fantastic if your opponent's trying to burn out your creature. It's also protection against like Anger of the Gods, which is really, really good, obviously, as well. It stops a lethal burn spell. So, the first mode's not super good, but it can be relevant. Target player sacrifices an enchantment. So there's a ton of really good enchantments in this format. There's Oath of Nissa, which isn't fantastic, but there's Wolf Willow Haven. There's Old Growth Troll after it dies. There's, oh my goodness, there's Omniscience if your Lotus combo deck opponent's trying to go off. There's Fires of Invention, which is really good. I can't think of any more enchantments, but I know there's a lot more. But anyways, sacrificing an enchantment can be very, very relevant. And Leyline Binding, boom, yeah, there's another great one. There's plenty more. But anyways, and then obviously, which the most common mode is put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control and have that creature fight. Which, hey, it's a 2-mana removal spell that buffs your dude. I mean, what's not to like about that? So, anyways, Mochas Command is a very, very powerful card, and I think it's easily one of the most underrated cards. Again, kind of like what we talked about, it doesn't have It's, you know, it's a green-white card, so very few decks can play it, but if you're in those colors, you should be playing at least like 2-3 copies of Mochas Command. So, all right, number one. What is the number one underrated card on the list? We already have a bunch of my pet cards already. The number one card on this list is Lissa Sunslayer. So, I know it sees a little bit of play in the format, but as a whole, does not see a lot. It's a 3/3 for 1 black-green legendary creature Phyrexian zombie elf with first strike and death touch. When it deals combat damage to a player, choose one. You draw a card and you lose 1 life, destroy target enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. So, Lissa, this card is so good. Similar to Mochas Command, it is a 2-color card, so it's, you know, a lot of decks can't play it, or as many decks, I should say. But I can tell you from, personal experience, if I'm playing an aggro deck and I'm playing against Lissa, the ground game's off. We're not attacking with ground creatures anymore. Unless our opponent's almost dead and we're just trying to, turn them sideways, you're not attacking on the ground anymore against this card. If you're playing this card, you've got the ground secured. You can sit there, you can attack. You can either put them into the abyss where they just have to keep throwing a creature at it, or they just let it through and you draw a card and lose 1 life, which is what you're going to do most of the time. Removing 3 counters from a permanent can be very, very relevant, especially if you're playing like battles, for instance. You can, sap life from a planeswalker, that kind of thing. There's a ton of things you can do with Lissa Sunslayer with that last ability, and destroy target enchantment, kind of like what we talked about with Mochas Command. There's a lot of very relevant enchantments in this format. So, Lissa Sunslayer, super underrated card. I mean, it's a beating. This card is an absolute beating. Decks that I would play it in, obviously, if you're playing a Golgari mid-range deck, a Jund, anything that's green-black. Elves, if you're playing Golgari Elves, I think you should be playing a few Lissa Sunslayers. Yeah, it doesn't ramp you, but it's such a good elf. Collected Company deck, if you're in the Golgari colors, I would highly consider playing Lissa as well, just because you can hit it with Collected Company. You get to put it in play. So, very, very underrated card as a whole. That is why it is number one on the list, because I've lost to this card so many times, and I'm tired of... I don't want people to play it against me, to be fair, but it's just that good of a card. So anyways, that is my top 10 underrated cards in Pioneer. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. I think this was a really fun video. I haven't made a video like this in a while. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you like the list? Do you hate it? What would you change? What's your personal list of underrated cards? Just let me know in the comment section below. I'm Commander Crane. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.